We've been traveling for quite a while, and I thought that this would be a really good opportunity for a review of the Crusader Hurricane that we have, and go through, I think, the pros and cons of owning one. Um, the issues that we've had, the things that we liked about it, and the things that we didn't like about it, and some of the mods that we're going to do to the van to make it more suitable for us. And of course, there is always the big question. People always ask me, would I buy another Crusader? I will answer that at the end of the video. We only had the van for about a week before we left on our lap, so our lap was basically a shakedown trip. In the week, I did a couple of simple mods. I did a DIY SOG unit for the cassette toilet. We went ahead and also polyurethane all the raw edges, because when we took all the hatches off, there was just lots of sawdust and splintering bits where the edges were routed. And the other thing that we did with the van was we put on a blackjack unit. I also got tire pressure monitoring system and put that on the van. The unit that I had was basically for the car and the van together, so it's just one monitoring unit. The other thing that I did was to add a second camera to the back of the van. Now, the original camera was a reverse camera, but with the caravan on, I couldn't see what was behind me, and I didn't want to be hogging the road. I wanted to be able to make sure that if there was someone behind me or coming up to me really quickly, that I would be able to get on the VHF and tell them that they could go around as I was traveling a little slower. I think in this 12 months, we traveled at about 90 to 100k per hour. There were only a couple of times where we went over 100k, and that was to overtake, but I was in no hurry and I didn't want to rush it. So we sat basically between 90 to 100 for the majority of the lap. We've now been traveling in the van for over 13 months, and I thought it might be time for a long-term review of the caravan. I'm not going to go through in detail with all the issues that I've had with the van. I've documented that in earlier videos, but I will go ahead and just list the issues that we have faced. I think the first one was the range hood. It worked only the first time and didn't work after that. The second issue that we had was that when we got onto the corrugations, the range hood actually dropped out of its mount and fell onto the cooktop, and it smashed the glass cooktop cover. The next issue that we had was with the circuit breaker that was hidden behind the second battery outside the caravan. The fourth issue was the electric brakes of the caravan. The actuator wouldn't stop pumping. At about the same time, we also had an issue with the water heater unit attempting to eject itself from the caravan because the screws holding it in place just had not enough purchase on the fiberglass skin on the outside of the van. We found that the majority of the door latch retainers and drawer latch retainers broke. These are the plastic ones. And at about the same time, our microwave was shaken to death and was causing all sorts of electrical shorts and arcs in the cabinetry. While we were on the Gib, another thing that happened at about the same time as the broken latch retainers was that the covers for the fridge doors came loose. The trims at the bottom broke, which made the face fall off the fridge door. So we had to go ahead and tape it up to be able to continue with our journey. After that, I think it was the electrical step that had stopped functioning. So we have had quite a few issues, but to be fair, our lap was the shakedown trip, simply because we didn't have enough time between delivery and the bookings that we had made for the beach camps out on the Ningaloo. So we decided that we'd pack the van, do a few of the things before traveling, and then go up and deal with them along the way. I think the biggest challenge we faced was to try and book in with a caravan repairer to do any of the work. We were up north and caravan repairers were in very high demand, and most of the time I was told, look, it's going to take 3 to 4 months before I can get a slot for people to look at it. Anyway, all those issues basically have been resolved. I have covered them in earlier videos. A word of advice: if you are off-grid and you have any issues with the caravan, if it is a fixture, for example, range hood or microwave or gas top, I suggest that you do let Crusader know, or you let your dealer know, but at the same time also contact the supplier for the particular appliance. If you carry all the paperwork that was given to you when you purchased the van, all the suppliers are listed in there. And I found that the suppliers were really, really good to deal with. Give them a call, they want proof of purchase or proof of ownership, and they want to know when it was purchased. Send some photographs and a good description of the issue. Better still if it's a video description of the issue, and they will access it. And usually, if they don't get back to you on the same day, they will get back to you by the next day and work out with you where's the best place they can send a replacement to. Now, this does mean that you're going to have to fit it yourself, but generally these things are not too much of an issue. I think the only company that didn't respond to any communication, whether it was email or telephone calls or anything, was the supplier for the range hood. And that didn't get resolved until very, very late in our lap around Australia. Another issue, and I think this one was actually quite major, and we only discovered it when we sent the van for its 10,000k service. We were in Queensland when I booked the service, and I booked it approximately 3 months out. And I tried a few of the Crusader dealers, and none of them could fit me in until 2025. Now bear in mind, this is in the middle of 2024 or in the third quarter of 2024. And I finally managed to get a hold of Ian, the van whisperer in Redcliffe. Now, Ian was absolutely fantastic. He went through the entire van with a fine-tooth comb, did all the necessary checks to make sure that it met Crusader's list of requirements for a service, as well as checks of the entire undercarriage or chassis of the van. When he was under the van, he discovered that one of the suspension arms had 2 cracks in it along the weld. Now, he photographed these, and we sent the pictures into Tico, who provided the tough ride suspension for the chassis. And when they reviewed it, they suggested to us that both the suspension arms get replaced, as well as brand new bearings for the uni hubs that are in the Hurricane suspension. And this was all done at their cost. So that was a really good outcome. The last issue that we've had on and off were leaking windows. Now, we traveled over the top chasing the heat, and we didn't really get into a lot of rain until we hit, I think it was Daintree, and then after that, New South Wales. So we got really lucky. We had good weather almost all the way through. So we did not discover that we had leaking windows again until very late into ownership of the caravan. What has happened now is I have submitted a warranty claim into Crusader through the local Perth dealer, which I think is Cannington RV. I haven't heard back from them yet. This has now been about a month, but I'll give them a little bit of time as we are still on a trip up at the Ningaloo at the moment. And hopefully when I get back from this trip back to Perth, we will have a response and a date set for replacement. I believe that leaking windows is a common issue, and I will actually put up a video on it because I discovered that these windows actually leak in 3 different ways. Alright, so those are the issues that I had with the caravan. My advice to new caravan owners basically is to take the caravan for a few shakedown trips. I think it's important because if you are going to have any issues with the caravan, they're not all going to happen at the same time. And it's also, when you are using the caravan, it helps you plan the layout of where you would like to put items which would make life in a caravan a little easier. When it comes to installing simple things like shelves or pockets or even hooks, my only suggestion to you is to place it in the area where you're going to use it. It just makes it a lot more convenient. It might not be the most aesthetic position, but I think when you're traveling in a caravan, having everything at hand and conveniently located makes a big difference. Now that we've finished a lap and I have access to tools and some space at home, there are a few mods which I'm going to be doing to my own caravan. And basically, the first would be to insect-proof all the windows. And I will be putting out a video detailing what I intend to do. The next is slightly more difficult. When I ordered the van, I requested to have a composting toilet, and at that time the manufacturer said not possible in this series of van. However, the demand for composting toilets has gone up, and I think that they now make it an option. I intend to pull out the existing cassette toilet and to put in a composting toilet, and I will go ahead and detail the steps as I go, and let you know any issues that I face. And if I am successful in doing that, I will then do a review later of how the composting toilet is, or how the mod to put the composting toilet has held up. We have a very, very small caravan. It's a Crusader Hurricane, and as it is, I have got 3 solar panels on the roof at the moment, which meant having to delete the TV antenna and satellite TV antenna as well. But that also meant that I couldn't put an exhaust fan on the roof. So one of the things I'm going to try and design would be a window fan so that I can exhaust out the shower stall when we have a warm shower. I do know that there are exhaust fans now which fit the gas vents, and that is also an option, but it does mean having to cut a large hole in the caravan, and I'm not prepared to do that. I think the last mod that I have in mind at the moment, and I haven't figured out how to do that, is I would like to find some way to vent the electrical system that is under the bed. Because what happens is when you connect it to power, it means that the charger is on most of the time and your inverter is running, so that you have 240 volts in all the power outlets. And this does make the compartment under the bed a little bit warm. I think when we were at caravan parks and I measured the temperature under the bed, it was like 48 degrees. So if I could find a way to vent that, I think that would be brilliant, because the cooler the electrics are, the longer they last. Since I started putting videos up, I have had a lot of people message me and ask me, would I buy another Crusader caravan? Well, I have to say, all the issues that I've had with the caravan were basically with appliances and how the appliances were installed. And the way that they were installed from the factory was not suitable for off-road use. I think the most critical one was the water heater unit. I think if you look back through all my videos, you will find that I have found solutions to install these so that they don't give any problems. If I was going to do a lap again, I think I would actually have selected a slightly larger van. It would have been really, really nice to have a van with a fixed dining table, especially if I was working on the computer and I just wanted to leave everything at night and go to bed. You know, having a fixed table, I could just leave it all there. But having a table which I'd have to remove, you know, every night before getting to bed was a bit of a hassle. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like the small van, and now that we've finished our laps and we'll be focusing on shorter trips, you know, a few weeks or a few months at a time, and not, you know, a whole year or more at a time, I'm happy with the size of the Hurricane. Another bonus for me is that the Hurricane will actually fit in the area at my house. I'm able to park it at home and I don't have to pay additional rental to have it parked outside. I hope this video will help some of you, especially those of you who are newer to caravanning, to help you make a decision as to the van that you purchase or to the options that you actually add to your caravan. One thing that I didn't touch upon is batteries and solar power, but in terms of battery systems and solar panels, I think it really depends a lot upon where you stay and where you caravan. We live in WA, and one of the things that I never considered before going on a lap was the angle of the sun and how it affects the solar panels. In WA, in the areas of Perth and further north, the angle of the sun isn't that important. There is heaps and heaps of sunlight available. So we never had any issues with power all the way through until we started to come down south on the east coast. The angle of the sun generated heaps of power. We only have 400 amps of lithium and we've got 600 watts of solar on the roof. And we found that as we went further down south and getting into winter and the sun was lower in the horizon, we started to run into days where we didn't have enough battery power. I remember clearly when we were at Lake's entrance and it rained for 4 days in a row, we were down to nearly 20% of the power, and this was being really, really careful with the power usage in the van. So my suggestion to you is, if you intend to travel or if you're staying further south, get as much wattage, solar panel wattage on the roof as you possibly can, and get the largest battery system that you can. Alright, because this will help when you are out and about down south during the winter. Up north, it's not an issue. Right. So would I buy another Crusader caravan? Well, I have to say that after all the issues have been rectified, the van itself is actually really, really good. I have not had any issues with cabinetry or permanent fixtures in the van. Nothing has come loose, nothing has cracked. Everything has held in place really, really well. If I had a better understanding of how appliances were going to be installed in the new van, and if I think that that would hold up well, I would not have any issue buying another Crusader caravan. I actually think that the van itself is quite well made. Appliances needed to be fitted in a particular way, especially for off-road use, which is what we do a lot of. And if the installation method met with my satisfaction, I wouldn't hesitate to buy another. I hope you have found this video informative, and if you have, please hit the like and subscribe button and stay tuned, because I do have a couple of how-to videos coming up soon. The first would be insect proofing the windows and understanding a little better as to how and why they leak, and also installing a composting toilet into the Hurricane.